today to the Family Matters Summit, I get the amazing opportunity of introducing and interviewing one of my dear friends, Garrett Gunderson, the national best-selling author of Killing Sacred Cows.
Yeah, and
What would billionaires do?
yeah, a couple books. It's amazing.
Amazing.
I've almost written as many as I've read at this point. Just kidding.
Oh, well, I know that's not the case, but nonetheless, you've been a prolific author. And the thing that I really love about Garrett is his approach has been not only understandable, but it's with the investor in mind. And so frequently, individuals get pulled into this terrible trap of what's best for the person investing your money, not what's best for investing. And so you've really been directive on investing in your sole purpose.
Right, and sole purpose is your values, which is your script for how to operate.
Yeah.
Combined with your passions and abilities for the highest context of living. So I would say that your sole purpose is who you are when you're at your best. It's not what you do, although you could do things aligned with your sole purpose. And a lot of times people think that they can't live or express their sole purpose because they're doing too much for everyone else and they don't take time for themselves and discount self-care as being selfish, or they think they've got to, always be in sacrifice because I remember growing up, my mom always ate last and always, worked extra and all this kind of stuff in order to provide a good life for us. But I always think it's important that we provide a good life for ourselves. Otherwise, we lower our energy and our ability to listen to our intuition, know our sole purpose, live that sole purpose, and therefore it limits our results even if we work harder. Yeah. So you could work harder but have the wrong philosophy and you just end up with limited outcomes.
Yeah. So Garrett, tell us about your family. Married to Carrie. How long?
So I've been married for 19 years. June 1st, 2002 is when we got married. Dated for 2.5 years before that. So I walked into a Kmart that she was working at when she was 19 years old and fell in love. I don't even understand. I read Kmart vest what had happened, but somehow that's what happened. And I played the long game because she was dating someone else. She was my friend's sister. And we became friends, and eventually I made her a meal once, and with her and her friends, and it just was different after that.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So
two kids?
2 kids, Breck and Roman. So Breck is my 16-year-old son. Pretty introverted, but finding his voice at this point. Very high IQ, but doesn't know how to apply that socially. Very quirky. He just got picked to be one of these kids that gets to do all these senior photos with other kids. And so he's like, I could be a model, he tells me. And I was like, well, maybe work out a little bit, but hey, whatever. And then my youngest, Roman, he's about to be in a play right now, Frozen, for a school, and also open for me as a stand-up comedian when I film my comedy special. So he's a character. He's a mini version of me. In some ways, with the way he expresses, and it feels like sometimes my oldest son is a big version of my wife because he's 6'5", 16 years old and 6'5".
Unbelievable.
Yeah, crazy.
Unbelievable. And Garrett is definitely a loving father, supportive, and it was so fun to watch Roman open up for you in the comedy shows.
He brought the energy up.
Oh,
it
really
was
did.
A pretty amazing thing. And he's ice, just cold as that, just not stressed, not worried, he's like, I'm good. Like, you want to rehearse? Like, I'm fine. I've already practiced. I'm good to go. And got up there and really made people laugh. It was great.
It really is fun to watch the interaction you've had, and particularly, how you've brought the money aspect into your family. So the first question I want to ask you, Garrett, is why does finances cause so much strain in families? What is the root of causing that, and what advice would you give families that have tension in their relationships due to money?
Look, my great-grandfather literally couldn't put food on the table. Like, people say they can't put food on the table, and that happens to a degree, but like, he literally couldn't put any food on the table and ended up coming to America, leaving his wife, who was pregnant, behind, and didn't meet his daughter till she was 7 years old. Oof. Because he gets to Ellis Island, he takes a train into Utah, becomes was going to be a coal miner, but there's a mine disaster, so he does some, sheep and goat herding, and then eventually gets a job at the mine, lives in a tent for so long until he could finally afford to get them over to the United States and get into a home. And so that shapes a lot. Yeah. Like, you think about being separated. I'm separated for a week when I'm traveling and, doing comedy and speaking, and I'm like in turmoil.
Yeah.
7 years. that'll create a belief system a lot of times that gets passed down from generations as the stories are told. And the stories where you never know if you're going to have enough, and you got to hold on to everything you got, or else you get separated from your family. And that belief system permeates almost at a cellular level, and is handed down. Where you watch, whether it's my mom or whether it's my grandfather or my great grandfather, they had very similar money profiles, and the way that they viewed money as something that was very much you hang on and penny pinch and scrimp and save and sacrifice and delay and defer and
put the coffee can under the mattress and
we put it in cellar, coffee can in a cellar with cash in it. That happened within my family. And so my great aunt had $500 some thousand saved in the credit union, but applied for welfare because it was a state of mind, and that money was never to be touched, therefore never enjoyed, and always to be afraid of. And so that is a very destructive thought pattern. And fortunately, I really had some amazing mentors in my life, and I really invested in myself, and I really wanted to understand the game of money and what money was. And I feel like philosophically, I got so deep in that I've really influenced even my parents' level of thinking, and my wife's and kids, and obviously the clients that we've had over the years.
So you definitely have shifted the modality, and I mean, you're one of the most prolific authors on abundance and changing that mindset. So what advice would you give to our viewers who are in a cheapskate or a kind of a scarce mindset, Garrett?
Well, there's good characteristics of that. I mean, saving money isn't a bad thing, and neither is being thrifty. But if it limits the joy and happiness that you have and those that you around you have, then money is now something that has conquered you, and that you are kind of working for rather than having it be a byproduct of you building value. So to me, this is about understanding our money personas, and the miser is the one that plays that game of preservation, and understanding like there's only a finite game of scrimping.
Yeah.
And no one shrinks their way to wealth. It's a game of value creation. So it really begins with, how do we understand and know our value?
Yeah.
How we can create value, that we're valuable just because we're human beings, that we're lovable regardless of what we've accomplished or regardless of the mistakes that we've made. And when we can start to see that and don't have this blinder of money telling us exactly what to do or not to do just in the name of having it, and we start doing it on a basis of connection, and we start investing in ourselves other than believing only in other people and Wall Street, which is a weird place to trust our money with. That's what it takes. And it
Legalized
takes that
robbery.
Yeah, it takes a leap of faith to invest in ourselves, because it's easy to blame others or hand it over and shirk and abdicate responsibility. But we create that behavior within our family.
Yeah.
We create those patterns. We show more than what we tell. And when we're showing that money's to be afraid of and to be held on to, it creates that scarcity.
So one of the big goals that everyone seems to have is to retire at 65 and be financially independent. But that very seldom seems to happen.
Right.
Talk for a minute, if you would, about the concept of retirement. And secondly, of why it isn't happening, why people are not financially independent when they're 65.
Look, retirement was a great concept at the turn of the century because, back in the early 1900s, everything was labor. It was physical labor. It was brawn, not brains. And there were workers that were dying and working 7 days a week. And so it was simply people weren't going to make it. They weren't lasting. And when Social Security came out, they're like, great, you can have this at 62. But people were dying at that time or 3 years later. So retirement became, if we've traded our time for money, and we're doing things that we hate in the name of having enough money to one day, someday finally do what we love, we miss out on the memories of life.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we sacrifice who we are in the name of that safety and security, in the name of having a pile of cash sometime in the future. But unfortunately, retirees today, even though they're living a lot longer typically, are subject to low interest rate environments confiscating what their lifestyle is going to be in retirement, to potential tax increases being a problem, and most importantly, inflation being so much higher than they ever could have prepared for, that what they thought was going to be a dream has turned out to be a nightmare. And unfortunately, using that method that they'll just sacrifice their whole life so that one day they can enjoy it, and they get there and they can't enjoy it, they've missed out on memories. So to me, it's retiring from the things we hate doing over time, figuring out the skill sets that we have so that we can add more value into the world and find ways that we can get paid for that, and then never retiring from our life because we created a life that we love And we're still in the game of value creation until the day that we die. Now, that might look different.
Yeah.
It might mean a few more days off every month, or even more time off every week. It might mean more trips along the way. Like, I decided in 2017 I would go to Italy for the summer. Didn't know how to do it in 2014 when we said we were going to do it. But it changed the narrative. It changed the game. It changed the rules.
Yeah.
It changed the outcome. And then we did a month in 2018. And then in 2019, I took my parents and siblings so that we could go on these really amazing trips where we can connect. And the first time we went was the first time that we had 63 straight days together, my wife and I, with my kids, because I would go speak somewhere or go to a business conference. And so we found out, that we really liked each other, and that was a good thing. We knew that before, but it didn't change that. It just strengthened it. We played cards. We didn't have a major agenda. We got in the pool and swam. We went and had pizza or gelato, and what it did was it helped us to enjoy life along the way instead of delaying that to a time that, who knows if it would, like, what if people went to retire and they retire in 2020? They've always wanted to travel. Well, it's really hard to go to Italy right now with the restrictions that are out there, so unfortunately, we've been sold a false narrative that if we just save enough money that one day, someday we can finally be happy. But the reality is that's predicated upon a faulty model that's very dogmatic, that says wealth is a function of three factors. A, how much money do you have? Because you've all heard it takes money to make money. B, how much risk are you willing to take? Because we've all heard high risk equals high return. And C, how long you're willing to wait, because the best things come to those who wait. So the function is money times rate times time, but that's a slow process that may not pan out, because it's not about financial independence. It's about a amount of money in a bank account. So I would say focus on cash flow instead.
Yeah, that's beautiful advice. Focus on cash flow. And I think that one of the things you talk about frequently that I want to dig on here a little bit is the shifting that mindset, and how individuals can shift their mindset out of that old broken model. And I know it's about value creation. So would you talk about shifting the mindset and walk through the value equation that we both know and love?
Right, yeah. The people that are trained that it takes money to make money, or high risk was high return, or it's about how long you can wait, don't understand that we have a hidden, untapped potential and capital. Mm-hmm. The first kind is mental capital. You might call it intellectual capital when I hear you speak sometimes, but I call it mental capital. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's ideas, knowledge, wisdom, insights, strategies, tools. It's ways that we can enhance our value or add value to other people. And then there's relationship capital, which is people, networks, organizations, mentors, friends, and family. And the bridge between mental and relationship capital is business. And that bridge is designed to serve others, solve problems, and create value. And the more value we create, the more financial byproduct comes out of that. So money is a byproduct of value, meaning in the world of cause and effect, value creation is the cause and dollars are the effect. So dollars follow value creation. And unfortunately, somewhere along the lines, people got confused and thought time and effort equaled good finance. But time and effort in things that aren't as productive or aren't as aligned with who you are, your skill sets or your abilities, because someone else made money doing it and you copy them, you don't quite get the same results, because it's not the same purpose, it's not the same energy, it's not the same capability. So rather than be jealous of someone else, it's about looking to yourself and saying, what could I really expose as my greatest assets? What could I really get clear about with emotional intelligence and communication, and ultimately what is it the world values that I can consistently provide and have the energy to provide to them, where most people go, well, I guess I'll just get this job and it's gonna, back in the day it used to be, well, you get a pension. We don't hear that very often anymore. And now I think the millennials and younger are saying, what good does this really do, and how does it leave the world a better place, which is a good question to ask, but it also takes doing work with that question and taking action, not just pointing blame. And so I think all of us have this opportunity to tap into mental and relationship capital by being more resourceful. It doesn't matter your resources, it's how you could be more resourceful, because investing in yourself could be how you start your day every day. It doesn't always have to be money. Sure, it could be money, taking a course or having a mentor or those kind of things, which I've continually done and spent more out of college every year than I spent in college, because it was more directly related to the things that I could create outcomes with, more directly related to my career.
So if I'm hearing this right, number one recommendation would be invest in yourself.
Right.
Number one. Number two is focus on adding value. And if you focus on adding value, particularly in the form of a business, which is kind of an entrepreneurial really initiative, what I hear you saying, then revenue and compensation will follow. And number three, do what you love to do. Don't just get tied up into a grind.
And what you love to do may not produce as much money as other things you could choose to do. Like, let's face it, I got offered a job to be working for an investment bank.
Yeah.
I can make a lot more money being an investment banker.
Yeah.
But I can't have the same amount of fulfillment.
Yeah.
Because I don't enjoy that process. I don't enjoy even what it's about anymore. It used to be great. Companies went public so they could raise funds to bring out value to more people. And then eventually it became, they go public so that they have a parachute of cash to pay the executives. And so I just wouldn't want to be part of that system for who I am based upon my values, even if it could earn more money. So I just think it's important to realize just because you love it doesn't mean it's going to pay better. But it does mean that you're going to relate to it differently and have different energy with it.
And I think the quality of life and how you manifest, and maybe even the example of breaking the narrative of for your family. I mean, you were not a coal miner. You didn't want to follow that model.
My great-grandfather, grandfathers, and dad were coal miners.
That's exactly right. And so you broke that and you manifest and show up in how you could best contribute to the world. I want to shift just a little bit to family. How do we impose this in our children? How do we get the mindset shift taking place with our kids and with our family? What advice would you give parents there?
Well, I just have them read anything that you're putting out there or get your work. I mean, I think that you've done the seminal work on that. I think that, but just like anything, it's time and attention.
Yeah.
That it's hard because I think the world has been caught up in we get rewarded by earning dollars, earning awards. And we don't always get those kind of accolades and acknowledgement for what we do within our family. And it's hard for a lot of people, especially for me in my 20s, because I was identifying with my net worth. I was identifying with success being what other people thought of me outside of my family and friends, which meant that I spent less time with them and I sacrificed time with them in order to go do these other things. And I believed at that moment that that's what it took. But that's because that was what my verbiage was, and we build our wealth through conversations. And if our conversations are committed to limited stories of I have to do this to put food on the table, that's not true.
Yeah.
I put food on the table in a shorter period of time than I was working every day. But that was my ego trying to blame, you're not supporting me enough, wife, and all this kind of stuff, and getting overextended in real estate and having so many businesses, because a lot of times we're trying to fill this unfillable void of recognition and love that can't come from that, because even when we get it, we feel like we're a fraud if we haven't done the work. What I mean by that is you can earn more money and still find someone else that has more. And then you go, oh, I'm great. Oh, wait, someone else has more. I'm not as great as I thought. And it's this comparison that becomes a thief of joy.
Yeah.
And it's tough because I think the hardest thing for me is designing the game, being deliberate about it, and being willing to say no to things that sound good, but that aren't consistent with the life that I'm committed to living. So yeah, in my 20s, I worked more than anyone I knew, 7 days a week, had no hobbies. And then all of a sudden when I turned 40, I've got so many hobbies. I love to fly fish. I'm amateur for sure. I love to be an amateur barista and make a wonderful cup of things that you don't drink. I love to, write comedy and perform comedy, which started as a hobby.
Which is amazing,
and
by the way.
Right. So I found all these, there's like a renaissance of these things that I could do that were hobbies. I've been playing my guitar again. I started to write performances and learn how to act. And what happened is because those didn't directly make me money, I avoided them. So the simplest piece of advice I can give everyone today is you find a hobby that's just for you. That has nothing to do with money, but it just has to do with you losing track of time and enjoying yourself. Because when we're enjoying ourselves, we can listen to our inner self again. We can listen to our intuition. We can listen to the inner voice that's that gentle nudge or that light feather to the face saying, hey, what if? And that's when I started having these dreams that led to writing a one-man show or doing comedy, because I had space. And it took 2.5 weeks to create that space in Italy. But after that, it's like, whoa, I had time to think. not just identifying myself as my business, not just identifying myself as what I did for my kids or for my family or what was in the bank, but really had a chance to go, what is it that I really want? And that's a really tough question when you aren't handling your finances, because if you have debt or negative cash flow, that can kind of become all consuming.
So it almost becomes a prison if you don't get that handled. So individuals that find themselves in that mode, that they are held captive to a big boat or a home or some of these alluring shackles,
seductive things that sound awesome.
What would you suggest? And then how do you shift into this new modality? You had just said something that just really caught my attention. I love your riffs, but something is the thief of joy.
Comparison is
the thief of joy. And following your inner voice, giving yourself time. How do you shift into that mode?
Comparison is us judging who we are against another person that we only have part of the story.
Yeah.
We only know what we extrapolate. Like I've seen enough people's financials to know that some people take their best month and extrapolate that for the next 11 months and say that's what they've made. And that's not what they made. That's just the amount of money that flowed through an account, not what they actually took home.
Yeah.
And I know that sometimes that's just our hurt little child trying to say, pay attention to me, like me.
Yeah.
What do you think? And what I've discovered is arrogance is when we want someone else to love us more than we've loved ourselves.
Yeah.
And it's a tough game to love ourselves. That's been a process for me to accept the good and the bad, the glory and the imperfection. I mean, that's a tough thing to do, but that's the game. And if we don't get there, no amount of money will ever suffice.
Isn't it just spectacular that we have a finance guy, a brilliant, one of the world leading finance guys, that telling us the game isn't about making more money or your balance sheet or your income statement. Even it really is about, number one, cash flow, and number two is doing what you love to do, and number three, healing your inner child and doing your personal work. That's pretty spectacular.
And doing what you love to do.
Honestly, pretty shocking, Garrett. I'm just saying.
And Rich, you know really well, doing what we love to do doesn't mean loving what we do all the time.
No.
It just means loving what we've chosen as the direction and as the fulfillment, and therefore allowing that to carry us through some of the minutia that comes along with it. Because we don't frolic in fields and just levitate. That's not how it works.
Yeah.
Because we learn some of our lessons through experience.
That's
and
right.
Some of those experiences can only be cemented by going through them.
Yeah, that's so profound. The only correction I might make is what you love to do, yes, but what you were built and wired to do, which I think is your sole purpose. My mentor, Stephen Covey, used to say, live, love, learn, and matter. And the purpose isn't about like frolicking the field or me spending months on end on a beach in Mexico. It's about doing something that's significance and consequence that matters, that's internally guided. And I think we're saying the same thing.
And I will say that there's a priority to this, because if you don't take care of yourself, you don't have much to give to your family.
Yeah.
If you don't take care of your family and you skip to try to take care of a tribe, well, then you're winning the booby prize. You're not winning the game.
Yeah.
You know, you lose the game, and that's what my wife called me out on in 2006.
Yeah.
You know, I remember the drive, and she called me out on it, and I was like, oh, yeah. She's like, you're extraordinary at business, but you're pretty ordinary as a husband and father. And that really hit me, and I got emotional about it. And rather than get defensive, I was like, okay, well, what if I did something different? We become creatures of habit a lot of times, but our calendar is so filled sometimes. And we're so quick to say yes sometimes that we say no to our sole purpose.
Yeah.
That we think that that's somehow selfish. But the thing is, by not taking care of ourselves, we have less to give. We have less that we listen to. And for a long time, I thought I need to be a better listener. And I always thought I was listening to other people, which is part of it. But it's even listening to myself.
Yeah.
And the higher self, not the self that has doubt and fear and worry and destruction and negativity. Because
quiet time, quiet, resolved, clear-headed time. Wow, Garrett, just really beautiful content. I hope everyone has really enjoyed the perspective here. I think where I would like to wrap up, I'm going to follow one more with the wrap up, but I want to talk a little bit about legacy, because so many people get focused on legacy, meaning leaving a bunch of money.
Right.
You are the founder of the concept of a family constitution, which I think built long-term off this concept of legato on the platform. Would you talk a little bit about what it really means to leave legacy and then I want to wrap up on your amazing children's book.
All right. So legacy, I think, is how we live. And in finance, it's usually about how much you leave behind tax efficiently. But you and I have been in groups. We spoke at MIT where there was this half of the group is saying, well, I'm going to leave money to my kids. The other half is like, I'm not leaving anything to the kids. I'm donating all to charity. Because the people donating to charity, were they charitable? Maybe. But I felt like a lot of it is they were worried about what they might do to their kids.
Yeah.
And part of that worry comes from what didn't happen along the way.
That's right.
Like, you don't have that worry because you're not just handing your kids money, and you've done these things when they're 8 years old, 10 years old, 12 years old, 14 years old, 16 years old. You know, you've got rituals, family, traditions and symbols within the family. You get together and you have conversations and have the difficult conversations. That's legacy because you're weaving a thread through their lives along the way, not dumping a bucket of something on them when you're gone.
Yeah.
And so the people are going, well, I'll just give my kids money. They're usually giving it at 30, 35, and 40. And I call that divide, distribute, and destroy.
Yeah.
Because there's no real instruction with it other than legalese. And that legalese is required for the courts and within the document. But what if your estate plan started with your own words? And those words were, here's the most meaningful philosophies and lessons. And here's the things that we learn that we think are useful from a philosophical and a place of principle, not from a place of strategy that could be outdated in the metaverse, or that could be outdated with NFTs, or that could be outdated with, you know, tiny houses. I don't know what the future holds, but I know that adaptability, creativity, and connections are three core tenets I want to make sure to pass on so that my kids, when they can be more resilient. And so part of that is, what are the struggles that we had along the way? Let's talk about those rather than hide from those. Let's not pretend everything's fine when it's not, and let the emotion come through and be there for one another so that we can grow in resilience. And so the family constitution is putting those words together so that when I'm gone, there's a document that says, hey, I don't know everything that needs to be done, but here's the philosophical foundation for us to carry forward as a family. And you know what? If other family members have insights and lessons and things they're passionate about that can be useful for the rest of us, go ahead and update the Constitution. This might be, you know, in the wrong ears, a little controversial, but I think this is the problem with the Constitution of the United States. A brilliant document, 4,400 words that changed the world forever.
Yeah.
But what we did is we wrote it hundreds of years ago, and now we have people that ignore it, debate it, or just don't understand it because they're not related to it, because they're not adding to it.
Yeah.
And we've had to have new discoveries in the last couple hundred years.
Yeah.
We've had to have brilliant insights from great thinkers, and somehow we're not adding to that.
Yeah.
We're not capturing that. We're just fighting about everything.
Yeah.
And I think people support that, which they help to create.
It's a really a good point, the need to update whatever learning or knowledge or modality occurs. That's one of the things I love that you've done with your board and how you've set up your
I mean, I guess we have the Bill of Rights and stuff, but
Yeah.
like, I still feel like there's more to be desired, and I want my family to be part of that. So I want them
ongoing
to
updating it.
Right, ongoing. And, you know, I've created an appendix to mine that has exercises and worksheets, and we're about to roll out this homeschooling where I'm going to be teaching about money. I'm going to be teaching about economics. I'm going to be teaching about prosperity thinking. I'm going to be teaching the kids, you know, because I don't want them learning from someone who's never done it and doesn't understand it and gets their advice from the government.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of teachers, I love them, they're great, but their money map comes from government, which is formed in bureaucracy, not in entrepreneurship.
Or value creation. If we'd use your value equation, what difference would that make, and what different world would we live in?
Right. I just want to make sure they're not hearing Marxist philosophies. I want them to hear free enterprise, which is even different than capitalistic philosophies, because I want them to understand they're valuable. If they can learn how to add more value, and that they can really invest in themselves, they can have a responsibility for their outcomes rather than being reliant upon an entity like a corporation or an entity like a government that may not have the capacity to deliver on the promise that they make. Yeah. And it's not about making them feel disappointed in the world. It's about making their place in the world in a way that's productive and prosperous, and that they can do something about it on a daily basis.
Yeah, beautiful, Garrett. Absolutely love it. I find I feel a little bit prompted here. Our dear friend Scott Ford talks about actually the Constitution. A lot of it came from the Iroquois Nation, and they left out a couple of key parts of it that I think if we had put that in, it would have solved a lot of the problems we're in. And I think from a family perspective, it's also extremely powerful. The two things that were left out is first of all, the women were the ones that decided whether they went to war or not the men. And women were the ones that
that would
picked
be
the
a better
chief.
way to handle things.
I wonder what our country might be like if the women, the elder women, were the ones picking or not whether or not we went into conflict and got
Unfortunately,
rid
it feels like capitalism and corporatism decides whether
a
we go to
little
war
bit,
or
doesn't
not.
it?
Yeah.
The second key concept is 7 generational thinking, is looking not only now, but every decision being framed, looking 3 generations forward, impact, and 3 generations of wisdom looking back. If we did that then and now with our families, how much more powerful is it?
Yeah.
Thanks for letting me shift there for a minute. I want to wrap up with something that is so fun. Man, I don't even know what had to introduce you anymore because you have shifted so many times. It's so fun. I'm not sure whether I'm getting the GQ Jesus, the financial guy. You've got a little bit of it today, the comedian, and now I've got to add to the list of author of a children's book. Will you please share with the audience about this amazing children's book that you're writing on finances?
Well, I was actually out with Scott in the middle of Nebraska, and when I was flying home, I had a referral from one of our mutual friends, Patrick Gentempo, and I just called the referral in the airport. He wanted some financial help, and I was just going to refer him to some people. And then he asked more about me, and I had mentioned I was a comedian, and the person I'm sitting next to on the flight as we board, she's like, "So you're a comedian?" Because I have a booming voice. I said, "Yeah." So what's your name? So I told her, and then she looked me up and saw I had written a New York Times bestseller. And she sold 3 million copies of children's books and never hit the New York Times. So she's like, "I've always wanted to hit the New York Times." And I was like, "Well, I've always wanted to write a children's book." And my attempts have been not great, but here's the 4 things I want to share: how kids earn money, how they save it, how they spend it, and how they give it away. And so we wrote this book called I Am Money, as a perspective of money, and I don't grow on trees. And I got to tell you, I've cried twice reading it to people because it's really got such a cool message at the end and really tender. And I think that more than anything, adults are going to learn so much reading this book.
Yeah.
Because I feel like as an adult, we don't want to admit there's things we don't know about it.
Yeah.
But I really feel like the message is so concrete and so accessible of my life's work because of what Julia Cook did with this book.
Yeah.
So I'm really excited. We've got publishers that are one that's committed, I think 6 more that are interested. So it's getting a decent amount of buzz. And I'm really excited about where we're started with
Well,
them.
I was fortunate enough to see some of the graphics and to have Julia with you on the phone read it to me. And I have to tell you, it emotionally moved me. It was really touching and yet simple and beautiful. And I got to tell you, I'm really excited to see that come out, Garrett.
Yeah, I am too.
Where could, and I know we're going to have Julia on the program. I believe she's going to actually come on Family Matter Summit.
If people go to GarrettGunderson.com/kids, we'll have information about the kids book there.
Okay, great.
GarrettGunderson.com/kids.
GarrettGunderson.com.
Yeah, since this is pre-recorded, I will make sure to get that done.
Okay, wonderful, wonderful. Well, Garrett, just such a delight to have you on Family Matters Summit. Any final advice that you would give, picturing that most of these are families, oftentimes young families, any final just 1 or 2 little hints that they could do regarding money to change modalities?
Money is a concept. It's a man-made, efficient tool to exchange with one another. It represents a moment in time. It's like a snapshot. It accounts for value that we created in the past, but it doesn't dictate what we can do in the future. So it doesn't reflect our potential, and it doesn't determine our destiny. So what it really is a representation of is, a storage of that value. And so we can exchange efficiently with one another. And if we think of it as a concept rather than a spreadsheet, if we think of money as a tool rather than math, I think it becomes less intimidating. Mm-hmm. And I think that in society, we've gotten so far removed through diversifying into things we don't understand and locking our money away and investing in everything else other than ourselves because we just think it's too complicated. When we do that, we harm our ability to actually provide more value.
Yeah.
And if we are willing to have the leap of faith to invest in ourselves, in the skill sets that matter most, and the things that allow us to add the most value into the world, then we can earn more. And instead of just saving it, we earn more and grow that. And I call that expanding our means. And as we expand our means, then we can get some financial intelligence on how to keep more of what we make by not overpaying tax, not overpaying on interest, not overpaying on non-performing fees with our investments, or not having not having like poorly designed insurance policies that end up costing us money. So then you just become more efficient. And then rather than budgeting, you just simply pay yourself first. Automatically take a percentage off the top, set it aside, build up at least 6 months of savings before you go get in speculation and invest in things you don't know. And then think and focus more on how can you create cash flow with your money. And that's a big question. There's a lot to it. But if you're willing to investigate that, you can start to utilize the systems that every institution uses rather than be used by them with the system that they never use, which is set your money away and forget it.
So, Gary, I want to make sure that our listeners are not confusing, that you're not proposing just going and being frivolous with money and it just doesn't matter anymore.
No, you
what
pay
you're
yourself
proposing
first.
is you pay yourself first, number one. Number two is you do invest in yourself. You put enough money into, for example, eating healthy, or to explore and expand on that skill so you can get more refined in that skill that drives and motivates you, rather than sticking it in some place that really has no passion for you. That's what you're proposing, just to be clear.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm just saying that budgeting for most people, they end up putting less in themselves, and then they spend so much time tediously trying to manage where their money's going. And if you just pay yourself first, automatically set it in a separate account, live off the rest. If you can do that without borrowing or spending more than there is, and even if you're struggling right now, start anywhere.
Yeah.
The smallest amount of money, just build the habit.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful. Incredible advice. Garrett, thank you so much. I just
Thanks,
always
Appreciate
enjoy
you,
being with you, and there's not a discussion we've ever had, I think, ever in the maybe, 16 years we've known each other that hasn't been stimulating. And so thank you for joining us on Family Matters Summit. Give us your URL one more time in case people would like to get you.
GarrettGunderson.com, GarrettGunderson.com. /quiz takes you to the quiz that you can figure out your money personality, or /kids will let you find out about the children's book and whether it's out or whether it's coming out or whether you can pre-buy it. I think it's going to be the most impactful thing that I've done to this point, because I mean, we reach our kids and give them this really cool story of it's fun, it's funny, and it's hopeful, and it's very easy to understand. And I think about the mistakes they can avoid, and I think about the way that they could view money from this. It would have been really nice for me to know this as a kid.
Wonderful. Beautiful. Thank you so much for joining us, and look forward to our next time.